Hey, I'm back. Okay, to the streets. I wanted to start here at some point and talk about the streets just because that's where I ended up. I think that I look at my using career and it ends up being a career um, as a whole, I start to see that at the very beginning it was fun. I mean, it was fun to get high and go hang out with my friends, and we'd go party, and sometimes we'd go up to these these places in the woods that we knew about, and a bunch of other people would go there, and we just like drink kegs, and we'd go to school and kick it and hang out and have fun at school and party there, and go find out where the people are and go party there. And but the same thing in the scary movie, it always starts off with everybody's having fun, but then eventually it turns into screaming and running, and basically my own little version of hell. So I was just going to share a couple of stories. I don't think there's really any other way to do this. I ended up on the streets. If I'm not going to follow any rules anywhere, um, my family wasn't willing to put up with me, and I really couldn't blame them. I mean, I did at the time though, but I mean, who said I was irrational on street drugs? So, I mean, that's where it took me. I remember being in Seattle and I'd been using drugs all day, and then I decided that I was going to try to go to the mission. And I walked to the mission and I knocked on the door, and they opened the door and said, "You're too late. You have to be here at a certain time." And I was like, "Oh." And then he handed me a wool blanket, which I thought was actually really nice. So I took me and my wool blanket, and I went and found a bridge. There's like a hole in a fence, and I kind of crawled under it, and it was like a overpass bridge, and I got up underneath the overpass bridge, and then I thought, well, I better tie my shoes in knots just in case. So I'm gonna try to steal those while I'm sleeping. So I knotted my shoes, and I wrapped up in my blanket, kind of like diagonal, because it's really hard to get my whole person inside of one of those little wool blankets. I mean, that's not where it started. I mean, where it started was having fun and going to all these other parties. And it didn't end there at all. It turned into this hellacious thing. Another thing too was we had to generate money every day so we could be high. So it ended up with a lot of boosting, and you had to have nice clothes, because if you showed up in one of these Seattle stores, and they would judge a book by its cover. If you showed up in street clothes and we need to go check him out. I remember being in this big, huge outlet store, which will remain nameless, and I walked in. There was with another kid with me, and we were looking for stuff. I always wear these really big jeans on a lot of other gear, and I'd lay pants inside my pants in the crotch area, and we'd put other stuff. We just put other clothes on underneath our clothes. Anyway, we got into the elevator because we're looking around for stuff, and there's these two street girls in there, and they're also dressed nice, and they're also got bags full of stuff. And as soon as the door closed in the elevator, we're all looking at each other, and then we all started smiling, like, "What'd you get?" And everybody started showing everything they had from that store. And then the elevator stopped at the floor, and then it opened up, and all of us acted really normal and walked out of the store. Another thing I did that I ended up getting caught for was I was supposed to watch for this guy was taking this money out of these machines. People would park in Seattle, and he'd take this money out of these machines. This was like my mom's boyfriend at the time, and I was on all these drugs, and the alcohol was kicking in, and so I think I passed out like right there, and I'm supposed to be on the lookout, for this guy, and we both ended up getting thrown in King County. Later on, that was what I was not supposed to get in trouble for Seattle anymore, but it took me years to finally remember that. I had no idea. Running the streets of Seattle. Tried to run the streets of Yakima very much. It's just there's not the same kind of resources. I remember like panhandling in Seattle. I just remember every day being high, just coming to a head. I mean, we'd drink if we could. We'd get drugs if we could, and I just remember hanging out with all the kids on the street. I remember being downtown Seattle and hanging out next to probably Pike Place. And I'm just sitting there, like it's middle of the night. We're all just like chilling, having fun, talking. We're all high, and I'm talking to these two guys, and I don't really know them, but I mean, you're kind of used to, hey, what are you doing? And everybody's just like smoking cigarettes, talking shit, because we're all like loaded. And this car pulls up, and it's not even like 30, 40 feet away. There's this alley, and this car, it's like a Jeep. It looks like one of those Wagoneer Jeeps, but at the time it was probably cool, it was like a neat Wagoneer. It rolls up, parks, lights are on, door opens, dude jumps out and runs off. And I'm just like smoking a cigarette, and I'm like, well, that's really weird. And then I look over at this other guy next to me, and it's like, did that guy just jump out? And then the other guy over there is like, yeah. So we're in this like group of three people, and he's like, yeah, that dude just parked, left the car on, jumped out, and ran. I was like, that's one hell of a way to get a ride downtown.